We're on? Okay, hey guys, welcome to Filling In, and we're not still doing Batman month. That's taking a pause for now, but even though I got the Batman tie here. But so this is just going to be a brief interlude. We're doing an interview with none other than Dave Kot, the writer of Face Value Comics.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you for coming, Dave. Thank you.
Absolutely. One thing that we really like to do is give back to the local community. That's why we started the organization, and the comic books are just one branch of our autism advocacy and outreach.
And if you don't mind me saying, I really enjoy your comic. I mean, there are times when I enjoy the dark stories like Dark Knight Returns,
Sure.
Sin City, but and I know they're all Frank Miller works, but
that's a good.
I think it's a good thing that we got your comic is bright, colorful, cheerful, uplifting, and I think it's good that we had that kind of breath of fresh air that we have right now.
Thank you. This was the first comic book that I've ever done.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've taken ideas and done short stories and poetry and things of that nature in the past, but this was my first venture into the comics industry.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful to our artist, our main artist, actually, Sky. His 30 years of experience in the comic book industry, having worked for the larger members of the bigger comic groups. He shared a lot of great advice to me on how to navigate the boat that I've already put in the water. I was committed to doing a comic book, and really happy to see that so many people are enjoying this. It seems kind of weird to me, at least, that trying to do something good, it has become so newsworthy.
And your comic has gone from local, based around New York, to now international and worldwide, right?
Yeah, we recently signed a partnership with Diamond Comic Distributors, so our comic books are now available at our local York stores, but also worldwide. Issue 2 just hit the recent previews catalog on page 268, so fans can order issue 2, pre-order it now.
That's got to be big for you, I think, to have your comic go from local to worldwide. That's you're basically achieving what a lot of up and coming comic creators want to get to right now at this point.
I think that's the case, and it was a surprise to us. In fact, when we got the first contact email from one of the executives at Diamond, I thought it was spam. I didn't think that they would be reaching out to us. By that time, our comic book had really only been out for about 4 months.
Yeah.
So it was just surprising. Timing was great. The deal negotiations were happening during Autism Awareness Month as well.
Yeah.
But now we can spread the message a lot farther, and soon to be in different languages, and the issues are ongoing. It just is really exciting. Add in things like toy line from the comic book characters, more research, more meeting new fans, new stories to hear, share, and tell in our comics.
And you're probably going to be getting spots in like Comic Cons too, right?
Yes, we were in the recent Philadelphia Comic Con, but we also had a few other places as well. We recently featured in the Chicago Comic Con, and Diamond continues to spread the word about what we're doing, even at other conventions.
And
San Diego, maybe.
So, with all that being said, if you don't mind me reading.
No, that's fine.
What made you decide to become a comic book writer?
I'd always been a comic book fan, and I found out that comic books could tell a good story for escape, but the really well-written stories also taught lessons. It was something like maybe Aesop's Fables in more modern times, and I could pick through it in just 32 pages, more at my leisure. But I remember when my grandfather passed, my grandmother bought me a comic book just to kind of help pacify me and calm me for a little while, and it was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, issue #1. I still have that, and that was kind of start.
Yes, hello?
I remember that taking an advanced biology class in high school.
Yes.
I didn't study as well as I may have hoped, but I remember watching an episode of Spider-Man on the cartoons where he fought the arachnoid, which was close enough to arachnid, which helped me pass one of my tests.
The arachnid, was that the one where that guy turned into a giant spider? He was
Yes.
like a centaur type of guy?
Exactly.
I kind of remember that when I was little.
Yep.
Yeah. So, your comic, Face Value Comics, what is it about exactly? Just for those who haven't read it.
Well, kind of answering the other question too and pulling this in together, I saw a gap. One of the hallmarks of scientific research, especially at the postgraduate level, is to find a gap and a way to fill that gap. And in all the comic books that I had been reading, I never saw a featured character with autism. Being autistic myself, having worked with clients as a therapist who were on the autism spectrum, and having studied at the doctoral level, I really wanted to see a way that we could empower more kids to understand what autism is and what it isn't. So I decided to write a comic book. Face Value is the story of Michael. He is the first copywritten, first featured comics hero with autism. And we don't make apologies for that. We portray he and his actions, behaviors, consistent with real-world diagnostic criteria from the DSM-5. We also have several other characters in our stories who also embody different challenges, whether it might be anxiety or depression. Realize that Michael's autism may not be a reader's autism, but we draw specific characters that hopefully some readers can identify something like that. I was really happy. There was a fan in the UK. Her son was nonverbal, and she showed him our Facebook page about the character on the screen and explained to him what we were about. She showed me the video of her son pointing to the screen and then pointing back at himself. He gets it.
Yeah.
How do you capture that? I mean, that was before our comics were readily available in the UK. Now they are.
Yeah.
And that just, I think, is part of our success that you mentioned. So many other people want to get into Diamond and make a splash on the world scene. I think those that are successful have a passion and a desire to tell a story through comics. I think sometimes people reverse the order that they want to do comics, and they can draw lots of nice pictures or tell pieces of a story, but lack the cohesion to have purpose behind it. That's why I find fault in some characters nowadays that are, although two-dimensional on the page, really are just two-dimensional. There's not a lot of depth. We don't know their personality, history, backgrounds, or motivations seem not to match their character. We tried to do that a little differently with our characters. Like I said, I hadn't written a comic book before this, but one thing I did know how to do was write psychological assessments to look for different behaviors and patterns. So all of our characters, our main characters in the story, have a fictitious but well thought out psychological assessment to include any health disorders, mental disorders, or unique challenges that they would have. And that makes our characters a little more believable.
Yeah, it's sort of about characters who are able to rise above the challenges set upon them, but do it in a sort of believable manner, right?
Right.
Not like how, say, some other comics would just try to just whitewash everything.
Right.
That they could just make a magic wish and suddenly everything is all better.
Right. They slap labels of different diversity on a new character or reinvent a character, and don't realize that those labels are more than just a brand or a gimmick to attract new readership. There's a responsibility, a social responsibility to the young readers, for comic writers and artists to portray any person with dignity and respect, regardless of any categorization that they may fall into a different demographic or a different category of things. Don't just slap a label and expect that that's going to work for everything and not have any depth of character or unique challenges.
Yeah.
Focusing on those.
Not just having them portrayed in a sort of manner that just really sets people off, just puts people off from them. You know, like say you look at a recent Frank Miller comic and you see that the characters are sort of like male chauvinists, or the women are all sexualized, they're always talking about or thinking about sex. You try to give them more than just these one or two dimensions.
Right. That's really hard. I mean, one thing that's really nice with us, my wife Angela helps co-write, and by and large she does the voice story behind what the female characters would say.
Yeah.
Because we believe dogs can't write cat stories. I wouldn't know how a young teen may feel being asked out on a date, or how she might turn that individual down politely. I have an idea of what that script would sound like, but not having experienced that, Angie's voice to that situation lends a lot more credibility and depth. And that's one thing too with the writers, being autistic myself, writing the character of Michael. I don't know who could write a character with autism well when a large number of the comic books still marginalize the condition. In fact, looking at Marvel's official website lists autism as a mental health weakness. How will Marvel ever have a hero vetted by the public when they themselves label autism as a weakness?
True. I did read, I don't know if you ever read Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil, but there was this character named Timmy that he introduced. I don't know if he was labeled as autistic. He was. And then in the miniseries Daredevil End of Days, he suddenly becomes the new Daredevil.
Yes.
Not much was explained other than he was just mentored by Daredevil, but he was somehow able to overcome or adjust to his autism. Right. If you don't mind me phrasing that. That's fine.
Yeah. How do you explain that?
Yeah.
Our good friend Alec Frazier, he actually wrote a book outlining how Marvel portrayed this character, what Daredevil is going to be like. His book was the Daredevil, the first feature hero with autism. A superhero with autism, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not, in my mind. I can't go buy that book to see the young man be Daredevil. I don't know the futuristic Daredevil who's autistic. Who are his villains? How does he handle autism now? Who are his allies? What is his personal life like? What are his superpowers, if any? Those things are so out there. It's fine they want to take that direction, but what have they done since they came out with it?
Yeah.
It's a shelved marketing idea. It's not a featured comic that I can pick up, and we know very little about the character.
End of Days, while good, and it's really good, it was more about just Ben Urich investigating Daredevil's death, not realizing that his adopted son Timmy became the new Daredevil. I don't know if it could be followed up on. It would be good to see that followed up on. Marvel could have their first autistic hero, if that's the case.
If they wanted to build on it more, they absolutely could. The building blocks are there.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Marvel and DC will always have the first fill in the blank with whatever adjective you want, superhero, because DC and Marvel co-own the copyright and trademark of the word superhero.
They actually trademarked it.
Yes, and they share it.
Nope. Yeah. I always wondered why books like Dynamite Comics, Image Comics, and other comics by other comic book companies, why don't exactly mention the word superhero? Do they also trademark the word supervillain too?
I'm not sure on that, but superhero has definitely been a thorn of contention for a lot of writers, especially with the advent of so many superhero genre movies. It's just a common word for things.
That's just I'm sorry. It's just so weird that they actually trademark it. I mean, I heard about it a bunch of times. It just sounds so unbelievable because they did not invent the word superhero.
Right. Actually, it was back in 1917 that we started to hear the word superhero be used in print, and that was before Marvel and DC had their hands in that pie.
Yeah. Okay, face value comics. It takes several elements. It's sort of like seeing the golden age for the modern age.
Thank you.
I mean, I never exactly read a golden age comic. I mean, okay, there's that Detective Comics number 27 special edition
Right.
that includes that little bit of the original Detective Comics and spliced in with some other. So I guess that's the closest I've ever come to reading an actual golden age comic. And some of the comics from Graphic Lit they had made that they were sort of able to get available online. I can't remember exactly, but what are your favorite comics, and would you say if any of them helps inspire face value comics? And what I said about the golden age, I take it a lot of your favorite comics could probably be from the golden age.
Yeah, I do like the classic characters. I think it was a lot cleaner. The stories, while sometimes could be pretty elaborate, did not require a year-long subscription to complete a story arc or 5 other spin-offs to complete an idea or a story. I think the good guys were good and the bad guys were bad. They got their comeuppance at the end, and it was okay to leave a comic book on the counter. If your mother or teacher saw it, you wouldn't have to hide it or explain yourself too much. The comic book code authority is no longer in effect, but it was a good self-governing guide. Because the comic books were shipped in the U.S. mail, that made anything that would be overly violent, grotesque, or salacious, or overly sexual would be considered a federal crime.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that we want to have a restriction on creativity, but there is some kind of restraint that we need to have.
And I think what we do with that is we let the customers decide. Right now, there are lots of mature-themed books that are very popular. I think even The Walking Dead would qualify as something like that.
Yeah, The Walking Dead, American Vampire, several other comics like Vertigo or Image. Yeah.
There are several other staple or go-to comics. Your Batman, your Superman, your Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America. So many of these, though, are delving into the realm of the anti-hero to celebrate something different, going against some greater problem than actually needs be. It's no longer an issue of, literally an issue of just fighting a bad guy who robbed a bank. Those days are gone, I think, in a lot of modern age comics. It's more psychological, sociological introspection, where the superheroes find themselves, where's their place in the world, in the universe, and if it doesn't fit easily, they go rogue or go villainous.
Yeah, some of which can be good, some of which can be understandable, like Hal Jordan becoming Parallax, which was sort of whitewashed when it was revealed that Parallax was a parasite, but it was understandable though, because he lost his whole city and he goes crazy and he allows this to happen to himself because he's got to vent somehow.
Right.
And if that results in destroying the entire Green Lantern Corps, then fine. But and then there's I didn't read these exact X-Men comics, but you know the character Bishop
Yes.
from X-Men? Yeah, he turned villain for a couple years because he comes from a dystopian future, and he believes that this mutant child, the first one born after House of M, is going to be the mutant pariah and will destroy everything. And this results in him going up against people who he believed to be his idols and closest allies. And he didn't see himself as a villain. He saw himself as doing the right thing. And I'll admit, it was understandable, but it was a little off-putting to see this guy become, well, a bad guy. He was an anti-hero, sure, but he had the best intentions.
Right. I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation because when you're explaining the Bishop character to me, I know him very well from Days of Future Past when it first came out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I am sitting now kind of where you are with the current movie. you get really excited because you're a fan of the X-Men and wanted to see it and want to see it on the screen. I'm betting most people your age will have seen the movie, not read the historical comic from which it was based, or perhaps loosely based from reports.
True, yeah.
So you would imagine for today, let's say, you really appreciate Heath Ledger's take on the Joker in the newest Batman stories. Now, imagine if your son, years down the road, comes up to you and says, "Wow, Dad, this new Joker in the Batman movie makes Heath Ledger look like a washed-up has-been." You're like, "What? I can't believe that. I have to go see that." Or, "Why did they say that? What was so good about that?" And it seems weird for you to change. This was what I know of the Joker. This is who I think the Joker is. I have a different perspective and perception on Batman. I was reading the comics when he had his back broken for the first time. Those were the hallmark moments. Those were the defining moments of my heroes. And I don't know what heroes there are today. They change too much. We see a big change of Marvel's lineup right now with the Jack Kirby estate lawsuit. Kirby's Thor is not Marvel's Thor now, held side by side. They look different. Kirby's Captain America looks different than Marvel's Captain America today. Hold them up side by side, they're different. Even Iron Man goes from traditional gold and red to now all silver like the Silver Surfer. If Tony Stark dons a surfboard, I don't know, that'd be over the top.
It's weird how these changes happen. I don't know what the issues could be. Could it be money? Could it be creative license issues? I mean, could it be just creative differences between the people who are currently doing the comics?
You're seeing all those things you're mentioning all are valid in today's market.
It's just, I'm not saying that it's a pointless thing, but it's like the old saying, can't we all just get along, right? I know that's kind of
It's
putting
interesting
a
you asked
cutesy
that.
mark on it, but honestly, what else can be said other than can't we all just get along?
And do you remember me earlier saying that Marvel and DC hold the copyright on
Yeah.
superhero?
But it's still a valid point though. I mean, when all else fails, what else can you say other than that?
Well, I think that's why we're seeing a lot more of independence breaking into the marketplace. Our story is certainly unique. It takes a lot longer for most than 4 months to get on Diamond's radar and get a partnership with that. It takes a lot of work. I think we had a lot of work already done with the autism advocacy. I think that's what helped propel us. The message of why we were doing it and how we were sharing that message was what was attractive. The art and the story were good, that was fine. But for a lot of other people, they're trying to fill a lot of shelf space with copycat material. So many anti-heroes out there. It's flooding the market. So many stories that are dark and gloomy. If you walk into an unlit room at midnight, you will not be able to see the black lamp or black lampshade. There's no contrast. It's all lost in the dark. If you're able to have something, we wanted to make a family-friendly comic book. We used the Golden Age kind of criteria to have that, to minimize bloodshed and violence. Our characters wear clothing in situations that would be modest and fair for good representation. We don't want to make women into sexualized objects.
Yeah, but you don't try to. I mean, you do address the realistic issues that you're trying to address in your comic. You don't try to whitewash or anything. You put them in, and I guess that's sort of leads up to the next question with why is your comic called Face Value Comics? Is it you're trying to get people to come to face value with these kinds of issues, right?
Wow, that's a unique take that I had not ever really considered, but I really like your take. The name we have for Face Value was because we teach in the comic a facial feature recognition, so there's value in recognizing the human face. Some people with autism are also nonverbal or largely nonverbal. So communicating how they are feeling emotionally may be challenging for some. They lack the patience to wait, whether it's written down or communicated with sign language, or just to simply observe and gather that information from how the kid's behaving. But facial feature recognition is a scientific theory stemming from social Darwinism, saying that we evolve as people, just like animals do, but we had evolved with social consciousness. We can learn to spot when a potential mate might be flirting with us. You pick up on nonverbal subtle cues. When a dog is growling at you and baring its teeth, you're not going to pet the dog.
Oh, no.
But if we can learn to spot those same biological reflexes of anger from a bully towards us, to spot that facial grimace that only lasts microseconds, if we can spot those, we can then predict how that behavior will come out, and then sidestep it.
Yeah.
So facial feature recognition is one key thing. When characters are in key scenes, we use the facial feature theories, freeze frame those faces on the static page, use speech and language bubbles, or speech and thought bubbles to give language to what's going on, and the whole story places the situation in context.
Yeah, but do you mind that I said about the coming to face value?
No, I think that's great.
I think because I thought that's what the comics title was signifying at the time, because I thought it was about coming to face value with these kinds of issues, the autism and everything else that your comics is trying to address.
I would love to take credit for that. I think that's a very catchy way to market and advertise the name. You may have a career in marketing and advertising, Phil. So keep the film rolling. You got some great ideas.
Thanks. Because I think it's good that there are some comics, even if they are as dark, even if they can be overly dark, they do try in some way to come to face value with issues like, and I keep making references to Frank Miller's work. I mean, I know there's other comics, but like Batman, I already talked about this when I talked about in Batman Origins. Batman Year One, it showed Commissioner Gordon that despite that he was a guy with noble intentions, even he had faults. He starts having an affair with his partner, Sarah Essen, and but at least he realizes that it's really bad for him, both professionally and personally, and he cuts it off, and it causes friction with him and his wife, but they're able to overcome it somehow, I guess. Okay. And really, it's about coming to face value with this character's inner demons.
That's one thing I think. We do a lot of breaking the fourth wall to readers, where we have the characters talk directly to the readers and quickly immerse them in our world. But one thing we did in the comic for issue 1, the first day Michael, our hero, who's autistic, is going to school, the page is turned upside down. And some people may have thought, wow, this is a freshman printing mistake from a new independent, but it was an intentional print. Nothing changes to the story. There are no secret codes or words or clues on the page by turning it a different way. But it was our social commentary that readers literally had to change their perspective to see a person with autism differently than they may have expected.
Yeah.
We can do those kind of, I like to call them throat punch moments, where we take society and say, hey, look, just check this out for a second, really consider it, and I want to take your breath away for just 1 minute. Consider how these characters feel, because these characters in the story are your neighbors, your students in classrooms, your friends, family. It just, the recent statistics are quite staggering, the percentage of new indications of autism diagnoses. Yet, how many comic books, and we're filming today in a comic store, how many comic books heroes are there? And if you count teams, I think there are There's 300 books just on the shelves here today.
Yeah, there's like a whole widespread of teams.
Just even if you take some of the titles that might include team members. So if you have the Avengers, you're adding more than 3 or 4 people right there as heroes. Any of the X-Men titles, Justice League, those guys. I mean, adding into those, how many of them have autism?
When it comes right down to it, you can't think of too many, or maybe none at all. And I apologize if I'm wrong on that.
You're not wrong at all. Most of the portrayals of individuals with autism in comic books have been kind of swept under the rug. One of the most prominent, outside of the Daredevil character that you mentioned, which I think it shows that you're a really great comic book fan. Most people who even know Daredevil don't know that level of obscurity. But again, in my mind, he's not a featured character. I'll recognize him as Marvel's first hero with autism when he's on the shelves as a comic hero. Other than he's just a good comic idea.
Yeah.
We can all have really great ideas. Put them on one sheet of paper and say, I'm going to come back to this one day and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But you can't do it, or you can't make a claim to it because I had the idea first and I made a copyright. So there, I think that's dumb. If anybody wants to copy us, I have 2 thoughts. One, good. There needs to be more advocacy out there. If Marvel wants to come out with a hero with autism, or they want to advance the Daredevil character, or say that Cyclops shows some traits of autism, or Marvel wants to maybe keep that going, and DC comes out and says, hey, Batman, yep, everybody thought he may have autism, we're going to come out and say that he does. Until a featured character is done with an ongoing title, and done with compassion for the diagnoses, the individual and unique challenges, and without a social agenda. I don't want there to be an Autism Speaks Batman character because of some kind of weird partnership where Batman is fighting off some other weird villain that's some kind of social manifestation, and it's a social commentary that is funneled by some other advocacy group. I don't want a Batman or any other character that would be touted as having autism just to be a gimmick.
Or try to do a PSA comic.
Right.
Not to say that PSA comics are bad, but if they're just like putting in autism in one of their comics as a PSA gimmick, no, you gotta give it a bit more depth than that.
Right.
Than just simply addressing them that you could just see in an after-school special.
Exactly, and those words are what I use to describe a lot of the stories. If we were just going to be Michael going to school and having a tough day and having some things done in a comic character style, that's fine. There are other books out there like that, where Sally goes to school, she's autistic, she has some unique challenges, goes home to her mom, dad, and dog, and it's done in a cartoon style. To me, that's not a comic book. Technically, it is, but when I think of comics, I'm thinking of action adventure, something I'm going to give a young person, and they're going to want to reenact and play that out in the backyard and beat each other up and go buy toys and go see the movie and things like that. Those are some things that we're doing. Not the movies yet, but we're doing the comics. We have over 18 months of partial storyboards done already. We have ongoing ideas that we're always coming up with. The recent changes with Marvel's Thor reminded us that no one has a copyright on Norse mythology, so we'll introduce Thor, the god of thunder and lightning, in our steampunk world. It makes sense for us to do that, and he'll be drawn differently than a lot of people may expect, but he'll have red hair and closer to the Norse tradition and legend than you're traditionally used to seeing. Toys, we're going to be working on what will be the world's first mainstream sensory toys for inclusive play. I need to come up with a better word for that. When I talk about it, it doesn't sound all that appealing, but what it would be.
Even my marketing tags could help.
Nice.
If you don't mind me saying.
No, what it would be is, now that we have an established character and storyline, now that we're reaching wider distribution, toys would make the next sense. But realizing the population that we've targeted with the comics, we also want to keep those with autism in mind when we come up with toys. So we're going to be partnering with one of the biggest plastic manufacturers in the world. They want to help build edutainment toys. They're educational and entertaining. Ours will be the first that takes into consideration the sensory perceptions of our audience, our customers, as well as present them with a quality toy that's going to stand literally toe-to-toe with the likes of Iron Man or Batman that you pull off of the shelves at any toy store. Because those manufacturers are going to be the ones also manufacturing our toys. But they'll also have elements of smell, touch, different sounds, different lights and gadgets and fixtures on the toys. Everything but the sense of taste, because we don't want people to eat our toys. But other than that, this gives kids different sensory experience that's going to be on the same level with the toys as their peers. So I'm going to bring my special toy that may smell like blueberries because the guy's wearing a blue costume, and his cape may crinkle, make a crinkle sound. Those two elements may self-soothe me in a stressful, anxious situation, but I don't need my security blanket. I got the cape that I can crinkle just for a minute if I'm getting stressed out. I don't need to take my own self time out, maybe as much, if I'm able to get self-comfort off of the toy with its lights or sounds or gears and gadgets in movement and motion for steampunk that kids would enjoy and have fun playing.
Yeah. So, with all that's being said about the autism awareness and addressing it, would you say that your comic is helping with autism awareness, and if so, how?
Considering the growth of our Facebook page, we have close to 2,000 followers in about a year.
Congrats.
Thanks. The growth of our readership to include Australia, the UK, the Middle East, as well as large contingents in the United States, especially the Northeast, our home areas. Yes, I think the word is spreading. I think it's great. I gave the one comment about a fan who responded in the UK. We were nominated for an international award for autism awareness in children's literature by a fan in Australia. The fact that Diamond picked us up to put on their bookshelf line of materials as an educational component, they see that potential as well. The comic book has also sparked more interest. Other organizations have asked me to write. One, in fact, would be the first public school curriculum to teach facial feature recognition for special needs kids to improve empathy and reduce bullying. That's a huge responsibility. And I have to come back and realize some days, I write comic books, right? And I like to downplay my education experience. I even like to downplay too about autism, being autistic, because I know you, and we've talked at other events and signings and social media and stuff, so I'm not comfortable with you. But for a lot of people, when they ask that question, it's usually one of the first questions they ask, and I don't understand why. At the same token, they don't ask if I'm right-handed or left-handed. They don't ask what prescription strength or medical diagnosis I have to wear my glasses. But these two things, in addition to being autistic, give me a unique perspective on the world. I'm also 6'5". Nobody asks me how exactly tall I am. That's another unique perspective I have on the world. Why is it that being autistic is anything really super special to make a comic book? I understand there's maybe a legitimacy in the fact that I'm a writer, creator, and stuff that a lot of other people couldn't. I mentioned you remember a lot of your famous writers. I don't know if they would have the same legitimacy to write an autistic character in a comic book without a lot of maybe research or personal investment into it. That already kind of have that, but I don't see it as a job qualification. I think writing with compassion, first and foremost, is how you write any character. Any hero has to have that level of give and take. with the reader understanding and the reader's going to love that character.
Yeah, I think it's just the way that the audience receives, just the way that it's written, the way it's portrayed, and ultimately what they do to express that appreciation and love and admiration for
We
it.
crushed our pre-order sales by 160%.
Wow.
I think we're making a difference.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Between the pre-orders for the relaunch of issue 1, as well as what we were able to do independently, we're about 5,000 copies sold in issue 1, which took us a little longer, but we're independent. But 5,000 to 6,000 is a good run for a mainstream comic book for an issue.
That's true. So you have autistic characters in your comic. Are they based on anyone you know who deal with autism in their lives? And you said that you have autism yourself.
Yes.
So would any of those characters be based on you or anyone else you know?
No, I think all the characters are going to stand for themselves based on how we were able to just build them with the diagnostic criteria. Do I have some experiences that I would share with Michael or the Zephyr later on? Maybe, but I think those will be things that other people share as well. One thing this book will not be is a personal rant or social agenda to work out any odd demons out of my psyche or to shove down any kind of social agenda of this is the only way or this is how autism is caused or created or cured. No, you will not find those messages in our comic book.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to have some characters be modeled off of some realistic people, but if you try to model them off too closely, you're kind of wondering, are there some issues that this person has to work out here? I mean...
Right. I think it's too soon for anybody to really make comparisons between our character and somebody that might be on another main stage. Certainly there are elements of this character and that character, but I realize there's only about 175 original stories ever told. They just tend to get recycled and reframed in a different perspective. How many times have Aesop's fables been recycled into a different story?
So, I should have asked this earlier, but what made you decide to incorporate autism into your comic?
Oh, not bad. That's pretty easy. Like I said, it was the one gap that I had seen in current comic books. When I was doing therapy with kids, one thing that I had done was teach them facial feature recognitions as a way to kind of predict other people's behavior. And I had been so successful with that, but I got tired of drawing the same kind of story sequence in captions and in boxes that they would relate their stories back to me. So I thought if I could just take this, combine it into a few pages, and print off copies at Staples or somewhere and give to my clients, that has evolved into a full-blown international comic book.
Yeah.
So it blows my mind. I don't even read all of the emails. It's really overwhelming to me at times that the fan mail that we get, the feedback that's so positive, and then the other interested parties, interested people that I would never otherwise think to talk to were calling me and talking with me. We recently got an email, and again, I didn't believe it when we got it for a while. I had to do some research and some consideration. It's not often that NBC News is supposed to do an interview to come out from California to talk to you.
Yeah.
That is very humbling to me, but at the same token, it gives me that passion to realize this is newsworthy.
Yeah.
Having an autistic character in a comic book, written with diagnostic, accuracy, respect, traditional nods to the golden age comic books and art and family wholesomeness, goodness. The good guys win, and he just happens to have autism. This is what's going to draw media attention, and it has. We've had interviews every week this entire calendar year, on average, there was we used to take a vacation there a little bit and a break, but it astounds me. It shows also how far we have to go to make autism acceptance not something that's so newsworthy attention. It just happens.
Yeah. Currently, you're doing a comic book writing workshop, and I've been to it, and I like to say I learned a lot from it. It's gotten me to hopefully not be so intimidated when it comes to doing comics, because I never knew about how the comic book writing process works, and scripting and everything. And I know I can't draw, but still, it's great.
Neither can I.
It's great. It's great that this is that it's happening anyway. So, how would you say that the workshop is going? And do you think that comic book writing in general should also be taught in schools?
I think the workshop is going well. I think the fact that we have people coming back and asking good questions reflects that the interest and need is there for that. The teaching aspects of comic books, I think, could certainly be easily incorporated into schools, especially liberal arts schools that would be teaching things like a mixed media of storytelling and art, whether it's your own drawn art or graphic design. There's so many principles involved. I think it could easily be done. I think storytelling in a short, succinct format is a lost art. In my mind, good quality comic books are our main equivalent for kids and young teen readers, the equivalent of short stories and short novels that are not getting read today because of electronics and other communication devices. It's easy though to sit down to read a 32-page comic book.
Yeah.
It's a little harder to sit down and read a 320-page novel.
Yeah. Especially if you're reading like a Stephen King book that's
Right.
more than 1,000 pages. But
Well, I mean, there are certainly, not to say that the people's interest isn't there. I think there are more
Yeah.
people's interest in issues of a comic book than a choice of a novel or other book.
Yeah.
The fact that comics can continually print month after month indicates the fan base is there.
Yeah, because comics are both a literary and visual medium. You get the best
Yes.
of both worlds. You got to see great artwork and good writing. You get to see them both mixed together, and it's great how they're melded together. They're melded into this one particular thing that you can just sit down and read and enjoy.
Right.
And be stunned by the visuals that are in it.
And that translates well into movies too. And here's where it is too. If we came out with a toy and said, hey, we got the first toy out here, guys, it's going to consider the developmental needs and it's going to be really nicely done. But who's it of? I don't know.
Yeah.
How does that character fit into my world of other superhero guys or characters? Having the comic book established well enough now on its way paves the way to say, oh, I know who that character is and this is why I want to.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't heard of too many schools that do teach comic book writing exactly. I've tried looking it up, but I couldn't find any. Do you know of any that teach comic book writing exactly? I mean, it's been incorporated in some graphic lit courses, but that was only like maybe 1 or 2 assignments, and it's not. I mean, it's more like a get it done and hand it in assignment rather than get it done and be graded on the quality of it.
That's a sad commentary. May I remind you that you're paying for that. So that I
True.
encourage you. One thing we talk about is autism advocacy. Be your own advocate and advocate for better teaching. Just hammering it out and saying it is not good enough. If it is, then don't pay for that.
If it's in a lit course, it makes sense that it's a handed-in assignment. But say if it were a writing course, if it were a full-on writing course with its own curriculum, its own particulars as to how it's to be done, like say a screenwriting course or a poetry writing course, then maybe then that would be the case.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like in a lit course, that's sort of understandable.
Yeah, but just to hand it in to get it done.
Yeah.
No follow through or efficacy on quality content. That's disappointing. Our brand manager Diamond actually has her graduate degree in comic books. It was a modified English literature degree with a focus and concentration on comic books as a delivery medium.
I never honestly knew about that. I never knew you could have like a degree in writing and have it be focused on comics. But
she was worked very close with her advisors and instructors to make something very unique. It's no wonder that she's a diamond with that level of creativity and background experience. So.
Lucky.
No, it's very, very hard work. It takes a visionary to look at things. One of my favorite. No, I get you. But one of my favorite stories is about a young man who had a self-design major at Carnegie Mellon. Mm-hmm. It was the degree he walked out with was Frisbee. He had a degree in Frisbee, but he took aerodynamics, plastics and mold modeling, marketing, sales, management, accounting, all of those things. And he walked out with his degree in Frisbee into the vice presidency of Whammo Toys. He knew it all. He knew how to market a Frisbee from concept, idea, to putting it on the shelf.
Do you think that comics should incorporate more realistic issues such as autism? And if they were put into mainstream comics like, say, Spider-Man or Captain America, Batman, Superman, do you think that would add more to them? If they were to incorporate them somehow, not just having the maybe if not having the main character, the character that you're reading about have autism, but maybe they have a new character that's added to their family or rogues gallery.
Possibly, but if you've ever seen product placement gone horribly wrong in a movie, commercial, or and it just like, why is the really super dark, cloaked hero off in the corner drinking? Is that a Miller Lite? Really? Why is he drinking Miller Lite? Why is he drinking Coke Zero? That doesn't fit the character. No, his duster and 5-gallon hat would suggest no. He doesn't light Marlboros. He lights a menthol light or something like that. It's not congruent. Bad product placement. On the same token, if we see another character in another comic book who might be in a wheelchair, write how those challenges are going to take place and what happens. How is their bad day different from your bad day? Vice versa. Their good day, what do they consider a success? How would you consider it a success? How would your readers consider this character to be a success? What are they hoping for? What does this mean to your readers? What does this character represent to the rest of the team? Yeah. What is their value? Just wheeling in a new character in a wheelchair and saying, this is our new hero, did we need them? No. Oh, this is the token individual in a wheelchair. Now we have to respect them because they're part of the team. What value do they add? How do they find this character? What need do they fill? And how well do they mesh with the rest of the group? If it was just done haphazardly, it could be very, very insulting. Yeah, unless
it's given a reasonable explanation at least. Like with Professor X, he's in a wheelchair because he suffered an accident when, I don't know, it's either caused by his friend Magneto or some other supervillain, and but see, they don't focus on him being in a wheelchair. They focus on him and the ideals that he stands for, because Stan Lee modeled him off of Martin Luther King, and he's the one that tries to go for the peaceful resolution between the hatred of mutants and humans.
I would ask, why is he in a wheelchair? I mean, we know.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's a storyline. But why did they decide to do that? Did they want to have a character in a wheelchair to represent something? Was that what they felt that this would be? How would Professor X be written differently if he weren't in a wheelchair? Would he be participating in other adventures with them, running alongside them, flying alongside them? Or is he confined to his wheelchair as a you can't go adventuring? Wow, that's a big limitation.
Yeah, and when we mentioned that bit about Days of Future Past, we see him, well, at the end of First Class, he's sort of like being his cheerful self. But then when Days of Future Past happened, we see him actually dealing with these issues. You know, he's been dealing with it for about, 10 years now, and he's allowed himself to become a drug addict and more bitter and cynical, and
No, that's a character evolution, and that's fine. I can, even if I may disagree with it, I can see that, and I think that's no reflection on him being in a wheelchair. But I wonder, why did they put him in a wheelchair? Why was that decided? What else were they considering? Would they consider him in crutches? Would they consider him with, some kind of new surgery? How else could this be done? Why fully in a wheelchair? That I don't know.
True.
I think there's too much time that it's passed to make that a consideration.
Yeah.
But I don't want any kind of disability or challenge to be just a label thrown out there. Hey, we have the first new this character. We have the first new that character. We have the first new this character. Aren't we awesome? And we already have global readership. So the fact that we just stamp it with our name, you got to buy it.
Do you think the same could be said with Barbara Gordon's transition into Oracle at the time?
Batwoman's character leaves a lot to be desired in my mind. Very much the whole concept that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Having her be the first lesbian.
No, Batgirl. Barbara Gordon.
Yeah,
When she became Oracle.
Yeah.
Not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
A little bit, but they didn't. I think it was a good idea at the time, encapsulated, and not really pursued.
Yeah, because now she's Batgirl. But at least they do the whole post-traumatic stress disorder where they address it. They don't. Again, they're not whitewashing it. They're actually addressing it. And again, like with your comic, coming to face value with these issues.
That is good, but we see that it was done in a short run.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can't really delve too much in with a character that often.
Yeah.
Just because of the continuity, the flashbacks and stuff. I mean, it could be for great storytelling, but you really have to have a readership that's going to be braced for those flashback scenarios that could be present.
Yeah.
That actually I think would probably make a very succinct way to translate that on a written page, convey the flashbacks and sequences.
And again, if you don't mind me saying, I think Gail Simone has managed to do that smooth transition pretty well, regardless of what's been going on with DC, and firing her and then rehiring her, because I think the audience understood what Gail Simone was trying to do. She understood what putting Barbara Gordon back as a Batgirl from Oracle to Batgirl what it meant. It wasn't just simply whitewashing. It had to be done something that was believable. Maybe not quite so believable, but believable enough to get readers interested and to understand what this character is going through and how Gail Simone is making this transition, however hard it can be.
Right. I mean, what I was mentioning earlier, and I think those are all really good points, Phil. I see the Batwoman being lesbian. That's fine. That's great.
Yeah.
And it shows a great acknowledgement by one of the biggest comic companies out there to include that level of diversity. For that, I applaud them. But please, do something with her character. Does she hold the hands of her partner? Does she kiss her partner as affectionately or romantically as a heterosexual couple would on any of the other comic book pages? What storylines are driving that? Goodness, I think even Archie Comics beat Batwoman to the punch of having a homophobic villain.
There have been a few instances in the Batwoman's comic where, small, but the main focus of her is being as a superhero. How she's not exactly championing. Yes,
but she should have unique challenges.
Yeah, she is.
And how those are played up, I think I applaud DC. I think they're missing a great opportunity. You have a whole new opportunity for rogues and villains and bad guys who represent the projected social injustice, and how she can champion over that, over the bullying, over the insults. Those can all be personified as villains. let her be a hero by overcoming the personification of those challenges that maybe many other readers could identify with in her story.
Because she was actually informed, she was in the army, I remember, and she was discharged due to, I don't know what they usually mark it as, I can't remember the phrase, but, you know, reasons unknown or something like that. I don't know, I can't remember what, don't ask, don't tell or something like that. I can't remember what the exact phrasing is, but
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah. And see, what kind of stopped me from reading Batwoman was that, see, Kate Kane, Batwoman, proposed to Maggie Sawyer, and I already mentioned this in the Batman spinoffs yesterday, but she proposed to Maggie Sawyer, and I thought we were going to get this big wedding. I'm not going to say big gay wedding, but big, maybe a big wedding. That would be a main storyline, and sort of like similar to what they did with Astonishing X-Men. I didn't read too much into it, but I understand that North Star, who's an openly gay character, he gets married, and this was sort of like big for Marvel. And I thought maybe DC would do something like that, but with Batwoman, because this is not only a Bat character, but also a character who's able to stand on her own. She's able to overcome the obstacles that have been thrust upon her. But then DC decided, hey, we're not going to have our characters be married anymore. They decide to have a marriage ban because they think that marriage detracts from the heroic actions of the character. And honestly,
Well, you see what that difficulty is creating in Aquaman already, too.
yeah, they're not exactly married, but they're just together. And then, okay, the only married couple that I can think of now in DC Comics is Animal Man and his family. And it actually addresses the issues that Animal Man has to go through, both as a family man, an everyman, and a superhero. But now they're like, hey, our characters aren't married anymore. It doesn't really add more to them, but really, it's like with Marvel in One More Day.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into a rant about that. That's not what this is about. But still, I think that needs to be. I think that's what I mean when they whitewash these kinds of issues. They should not do that.
I can understand taking things cautiously, slowly, getting the readership familiar with the product and the agenda that you're hoping for that character to play out. They were just going to introduce this. She's going to have typical challenges when it comes to dating or partnerships. That's fine. Let's see that. We certainly see that with Peter Parker. Now, I know I'm crossing companies, but still, we see character development in the big comic books. Why don't we get that for Batwoman? Why? For me, it just feels as though there's a label slapped on her. They'll address it periodically.
I think it's because Batwoman is still technically a fresh character. Yes, the idea has been around every so often, but this is like for the past few years now, like since about 2006, 2007, they've been mainly focused. They've had a huge focus on her, and with her and then they had her in 52. Then they had her in Detective Comics with the Elegy storyline, and now she has her own ongoing.
Yeah.
So I think it's still room to grow, room to grow, or room to improve, whichever you prefer.
I'm actually very excited to see their take on the new Batgirl. I'm really excited for the new creative team for that. I really like the new costume, the new art, the new direction. That's probably the one of my most excited, anticipated books. We mentioned about what
it
kind
still
of
Barbara
influences.
Gordon?
Babs.
Okay, yeah. All right. I've only been keeping up with the trades of the new 52 Gail Simone Batgirl series, so I'm not that caught up yet. But I've been hearing stuff about it. Yeah. So, where do you see yourself as a comic writer and your comic in the future?
Me, I'm just a guy. I have lots of ideas, and I'm fortunate to surround myself with people who can help take my ideas and make them into something bigger than myself. Where do I see us in the future? Ongoing with the comics. When we finish up with Face Value Comics with Michael's story, we'll branch off with the Zephyr. And for the readership, when we talk about having a first featured here with autism, it does feel a little bit like a good after-school special to realize that Michael, the middle school age kid, is our hero.
Yeah.
That feels good and it makes it warm fuzzies. but I wanted to have a little bit more of a comics heritage to our character, and that meant that when we finish up, we introduce the Zephyr, who's actually Michael from the future, as a spin-off. When we say we have the first featured hero with autism, it's actually the Zephyr, the blue costume character in our story. He goes back in time to save himself during this intergalactic invasion, because one of the hallmarks of steampunk literature is time travel. So he uses his electric sword to cut through the fabric of time and space to go back and save himself. Otherwise,
Is there going to be a transition where Michael becomes the Zephyr?
we'll have to wait and see.
Because one thing I always love about time travel stories, when the future self comes back in time,
That's what we have.
is how they make that transition. Sometimes they don't explain it, and it's that guesswork. That
Oh no,
makes
we have the science actually worked out behind it.
Okay.
Using the Bose-Einstein condensate theory.
Okay, that makes me all excited.
Yeah.
I just love seeing that whole transition between past self and future self. It's like,
Well, if you're ready, if you like that, we're gonna blow your mind a little bit. Okay.
Am I
So
gonna
when we
get
have the
like
Zephyr comic, right now the kids realize the Zephyr character as a comic book character.
yeah.
It's kind of like if Peter Parker were to read about Iron Man
Mm-hmm.
and an old Iron Man comic book, not realizing he actually exists. But the children will come to learn that their favorite comic book hero actually does exist. But what they've done was they were able to work the media out through time travel and talks and negotiations, similar to a comment made in the movie Men in Black, where they said if the population knew about the aliens and other monsters, they would just mass hysteria, it would be terrible.
Or Barry Allen reading about the adventures of Jay Garrick. Yeah.
So rather than expose that on CNN or Fox or NBC, we're just going to go ahead and take that away and tell about all these fantastic stories through the comic book medium. So people can still learn about the alien invasion and conspiracy theories and everything else and intergalactic monsters and stuff, things that go bump in the night, but they're in the comic books. So that's your newsstand kind of media attention. But yeah, we figured out the whole way of how he can time travel. And when the comic book, we have Zephyr, we'll have a 32-page comic. 28 pages will be the ongoing stories of Michael as the Zephyr. 4 pages, we've got a new artist on board. And there'll be 4 pages of the comic book. There'll be a snippet. It'll be a comic book within the comic book. It will be a non sequitur story where we can test out new ideas, new villains, new quick-make gadgets, and based on readership fan base opinion, we can add that into the ongoing storyline. You'll get 2 different styles of art in a comic book.
And here's another thing. This is something I'm realizing or remembering. The character Black Manta, Aquaman's archenemy,
He had autism and was
Yeah.
inexplicably cured.
Really?
Yes.
How is he cured?
Magic.
Really?
Yep.
Again, the whitewashing issue.
Yes, exactly.
First they had him be this guy who was fighting to control the sea so that black people would no longer be oppressed, but then that was sort of like a ruse. He didn't really care either way.
Right.
He just wanted control. And then they had him depicted as autistic, and now he's...
The depictions that they had of him, with the sensitivity he had to his sheets in his cell, the water temperatures and the sensitivities, all those were very good depictions. Again, we had things teed up for what could be a good portrayal of autism and the challenges and opportunities therein, even if it's with a villain. But just dropped. It's too hard to keep doing this. We're just gonna, you're cured.
And it's not being like used as, oh, he's evil because he's autistic. No. He's evil because maybe he's been oppressed because of his autism, or he doesn't know any better, or he just does what he does.
Right. There's so many different things that could be into consideration there. But with the curing him of autism, I don't know. How would you be if I cured you of being brown-haired? What does that leave you with? What if I cured you of having brown eyes? What does that mean? What are you left with? When people say I'm going to cure you of autism, what does that mean? A lot of people talk about it, but nobody really explains what that means.
Yeah, and it's like, and sometimes, and yeah, explaining could be good, but explaining in a way that makes, I guess, in a way that makes sense.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, you can drone. You could drone for on and on about a particular thing, but do it in a way that is sort of comprehensible and at least adds something, right? Rather than just for the sake of explaining.
Yes. It's like the polar opposite of shock value.
Yeah. Shock value being that
Short burst and then that's it, let you deal with it.
and explaining, you're just drawing on and on. And it's like, get to the point already. But I guess it's a matter of finding a balance.
Yeah.
So, and this is the last question, I guess.
Sure.
This is sort of like a generalization question. This is something I've been thinking about for a while. Okay, there have been several eras in comics. There's the Golden Age, which was marked by the first appearance of Superman, Action Comics #1. The Silver Age, marked by the Barry Allen, the Silver Age Flash in Showcase #4. Or I know it was Showcase. I can't remember the number. There was no exact ending as to when the Silver Age ended, but then the Bronze Age began, and that was when I guess more realistic issues like drug use and alcoholism and more literary characters like Conan the Barbarian were put in the comics. And then the modern age came, and we got more darker portrayals of our classic heroes like Batman, more anti-heroes, and they just became something more popular than ever before, as well as the expansion of popular comic lines like X-Men and others. And of course, there's the comic book movies. Now I think they call it the modern age because it's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
And I guess there's also some backup names for it, like the Dark Age, which makes sense, and the Iron Age going along with the different metals. So if the modern age were to come to an end, how do you think that would happen, and what would the next comic age be called?
I think it would be called the digital age because we have the advent of movies. Now we see that on this. We see our comic book characters on the screen. We also have the influx of digital print and digital media. I can buy my comic books for cheaper than the paper version for a digital copy on my iPad. So those kind of considerations, plus the opportunity for independent artists and writers can literally flood the market with minimal investment using digital media. There's no overhead costs, there's no shipping costs. It's all done online for a fraction of the cost of the printed material with none of the overhead or other ancillary costs.
Yeah, and I like some webcomics. I mean, granted, my preference is for the print because you can actually hold it in your hands. But it's also like it's like how you said about the texting, and a lot of people are all into the texting and scrolling through computers. You know, I'm not saying that newsprint should die, and if it were to die, give it at least something with some dignity, right? I guess what I'm saying is that with digital comics, don't just make it something that's just put out there. Not just like, hey, this is where it is right now. Buy it or read it because it's there. No, at least give it somewhat of a smooth transition. I don't know how, but at least something, I guess.
I think what will happen when, not if, when The Walking Dead hits the main screen, that will signify the rise of the comic books beyond comic books, and we'll see less of comic books done by the big companies. They'll be all focusing on writing movies. So more newer, fresher ideas will take the place of comic books because the main stories are already told.
Yeah. And I guess with the comics, that's why we try to come up with new storylines.
Right.
Not
What happens when Robert Downey Jr. will be the role of Tony Stark, Iron Man, for a decade.
Yeah.
What more do we need from him? He has not told a fraction of stories for Iron Man that would make sense on the big screen.
Because there's so many more to tell.
Right. So how do we prepare people for the transition away from Iron Man on the big screen? Do we have a television show where we can keep up that going? Can we do cartoons where we don't need Robert Downey Jr. anymore? We can have someone else do a voice actor and have that character go on forever. Realize too, all of our characters, our favorite heroes on the shelves, Batman just turned 75 this week.
Yeah.
I mean, we would not be following him if he had an acting career. He just wouldn't have that acting career for 75 years. Not as the Dark Knight anyway.
Yeah.
But on the printed page, he's ageless. He's immortal.
Yeah. And I guess that's what the Dark Knight trilogy can be for. It shows how comic book movies, or at least some kind of adaptation, could have a set beginning, middle, and end. Sure, you're taking elements, but you're putting it in a cohesive narrative manner that makes sense and can be compared to other big epic movie trilogies with those kinds of narrative structure.
Right. I once heard some good advice. The only thing that can really kill a true hero is bad writing. And,
Yeah.
And looking at it, you know, the new Fantastic Four movie, all the actors were told, don't worry about reading the comic books. We're not using the comic books based their characters
Really?
anyway.
That's what they said?
Yes.
I heard more that they were basing it off of the Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four.
No, it's going to be a little bit different. You can check it out online to see.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I keep hearing like all these various news sources who say, well, I don't know who more to believe.
Right.
So, yeah. I guess that's why they have like certain other, like you got characters like the Sandman or James Robinson's Starman. They're these characters who not only are taking up the mantle, they're making themselves their own heroes, their own characters.
Yes.
And they have, like, again, a set beginning, middle, and end. They're not something that they can just continuously keep going with.
And that's what we see in our own Genesis too. We have Michael's story for the first 4 issues, and we know that story is going to end. He's going to have to do something bigger and better. So we're going to be able to propel ourselves. You know, 4 issues for us will be over 8 months.
Yeah.
So we've got about a year in to tell Michael's story. That's a long time for us.
Yeah.
But we're also independent. You know, so we have other jobs and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So that's fun. But when we have Michael's story as the Zephyr, we have a whole new bunch of new villains to introduce. You got used to the four issues and the bad guys there. Some of them will continue on in different ways. Plus, some other characters take new angles, new twists, and it's again a reinvention. Plus, the element of time travel. The Zephyr will never get old,
Yeah.
literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
You know, we can change that.
And if people want to see the other characters, if they're not featured in the main comic, then that's why they have their own
Right.
comic in a way.
Yep.
So, well, I'd like to say thank you for having this interview with me.
Oh, it was really insightful. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for watching, and thank you to Planet X and Joe, who's working today, for allowing me to have this interview. And stay tuned, we'll be having the finale for the Batman month later on, but I'm glad we got to have this good interlude for it.
Oh, hey, before we go, let me remind people that they can subscribe to Face Value Comics. If you check out page 268 in the new previews catalog, they can order issue 2, pre-order it now at your favorite local comic store.
Yeah, definitely check out Face Value Comics. It is definitely something good, worth checking out, and worth reading. All right.
We have a Facebook page.
Oh, our Facebook page, yes, is Face Value Comics. Pretty easy there. You can also check us out. Our main website is, surprisingly, facevaluecomics.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at Face Value Comics.
All right. See you guys
Thanks.
later.